everyone. It's March 3rd, 2018, and this is your episode 136 of Percussion. I'm your host, Casey Cangelisi, and with me, as usual, are Megan Arns.
Hello.
And Laurel Black.
Hi.
Laurel, how's it feel to be the hottest mom on the internet?
Thanks, honey.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you're welcome. Every episode now, you guys. Get used to it. Get used to it. Every single episode. And Ben Charles is here.
I'm here as well. I'm not the hottest mom on the internet.
All right, so our guest today, you guys, is a performer, an educator, a composer, and arranger based in South Florida. He is the percussion instructor at Dreyfus School of the Arts and the Bach Middle School of the Arts, and they are a 2017 Percussive Arts Society International Percussion Ensemble Competition winner.
Bravo.
He is also the founder of Mode Marimba, the company Mode Marimba, and a faculty member at Malletlab. So hello and welcome to Eric Rucker. How are you?
Yeah, I'm great. Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, sure. You're very welcome. So Malletlab I've heard about, but I'd love for you to say just a little bit about. Is that a summer camp festival? Clinic?
Yeah. And actually, it's something that Drew Tucker and I kind of co-founded. I would say about 2 years ago. Our first, it currently right now is just a summer camp, but it has grown and just the ball is rolling so fast on the Malletlab brand and what else we can possibly do. It's going to turn into some other things, and we're really excited about that. But as of right now, it is a summer intensive, and we're trying to have a nice balance between, it's all focused on mallet percussion, but we're trying to have a nice balance between marching, jazz, and also concert percussion.
Yeah, great. Is this what Drew Tucker has, is he kind of he started this a while ago, right?
Yeah, he and I, it kind of came about. We were actually sitting at my apartment at the time 2 years ago, and we're like, man, we really want to do this summer camp thing. There's nothing good around South Florida. We wanted to make a destination that people from all over the country would want to come to. You know, advanced players is what we're looking for. There is an audition process, and we poured a glass of bourbon and bounced ideas, and we came up with the name Malletlab together. And that night we bought the domain name. It was like midnight, and then we just kind of started from there.
Wow.
But yeah,
great.
Yeah.
Well, I'm kind of segueing into plug mode here, which isn't something we always do on the show. But what will people find if they go to Malletlab? The website is malletlab.com.
It is, and currently right now they will find a website under construction.
I gotcha.
Yeah, right now we sold out. We capped it at 25 spots for this year, because that's what it was last year. We wanted to make a nice intimate camp, and it certainly was that. So we capped the number at 25 this year, and we were sold out in a month. And,
wow.
And at that point, we decided, well, let's try to get some more space since the demand is still there. So we did open up some more spots. But the website is actually going to be kind of turning away from just the summer intensive to our next big unveiling, which we're going to make it more of an educational resource that people can visit year round. And we're still working out some details for that, but we are in the process of reconfiguring the website so it's not just for the summer camp.
Very cool. Yeah, so I knew Eric when I was in South Florida, and it's funny because my students would have a concert, and then I would go see Eric's middle school students have a concert, and it was like they might be better than my college students. It's some seriously ridiculous playing. But one thing that I found out about getting to know Eric is that he's very much a percussion entrepreneur. And usually when I hear that term, it's someone that has an Instagram account and maybe a website and a lot of thoughts and nothing really concrete. And I think everyone knows that person on the internet, whoever that is for you. But Eric is not the person that has a bunch of ideas that are not concrete. And as very firm evidence of that, actually, Eric has actually developed a marimba called Mode Marimba. And it's been, I know, quite a big project for him over the past few years. And not too many people, I think, have developed an instrument more or less alone or on a very small team, at least. So, Eric, could you tell us about Mode Marimba and the sort of mission of the company and where it started, where it's going?
Sure. And, I want to, full disclosure here, I am not the main brains behind Mode Marimba. I might be kind of the face in the percussion world, But John Gloka, he's actually the person that he's the engineer, and I'm the percussionist. And it was really it takes me back, oh my gosh, to about 6 years ago actually. I was actually giving John's middle school student percussion lessons, and they wanted to buy their son a marimba, and John was like, okay, well, how much is a marimba? Because I would like for him to, keep practicing at home. And I said, well, it's about, $2,500 for a synthetic marimba. And he was like, what? Are you kidding me? I'm pretty sure I could build something for cheaper than that. And like at this time, I didn't really know John that well, or I just knew his son, and I knew John had owned a couple businesses in the past, and I didn't really know his history or anything. But we started talking about it more seriously, and as I got to know John, I got to realize that he actually used to reverse engineer Boeing parts. And basically, he worked for a company that was like the Napa Auto Parts of the airline industry, is how he kind of described it. So at that point, we started to, in his garage, and mainly him, he started to build some prototypes. And he's a person that really gets obsessed about something. And right now, and for the past 6 years, he's been obsessed with marimbas. So what we decided to do, and what our main object and our focus was I presented a list of problems to John that the current marimba world has. And honestly, one of the reasons that my middle school, the Bach Middle School of the Arts, is so good is because we have enough instruments. We have enough marimbas, and we got a 5 octave there early, one of our 5 octaves. But anyways, I said, John, first of all, this needs to be we only focused on 5 octave marimbas because, as you all know, like before ours came out, what was the cheapest one you could get was like $8,500, and that was a Musser, I think.
Sure.
Something like that. So I said, John, it needs to be, if we could keep it to like around $5,000, that would be great. It needs to fit through a standard sized door. And that's a huge issue that we have. And, it needs to sound good. So he went out and he reached out to a lot of the contacts that he had whenever he was working with the airline parts manufacturers overseas. And he got the calculations for the speed of sound that goes through rosewoods. We found a material that actually has the same speed of sound as rosewood, but twice the amplitude.
Huh.
So we started there, and we bought a CNC machine. we bought this used CNC machine, and if you don't know what that is, it's like one of those computerized cutter things. What's that, Ben?
Okay.
Oh yeah.
I was going to ask what that is. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And all of the major players have these or some form of these. So our CNC machine we bought for rather cheap, but we had to rebuild it. John had to rebuild it because that's how he works. So
is it giant?
it is a monster.
The ones I've seen are like insanely giant. Why are they so big?
They are so big because in order to machine down to 1,000th of an inch or 1,000th of a centimeter or whatever it can go to, it needs to not move. Because if the actual machine moves, it's going to completely mess up the cutting.
Yeah. Okay.
And it's called a CNC machine?
Yeah, CNC. Correct.
Are you guys familiar with CNC Music Factory?
No.
Oh, yes.
Thank you.
What?
Man.
What's that? Is that a band?
It's an old band.
Oh.
God, I feel old.
Everybody dance now. Bum, 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 right?
Oh.
Exactly.
One Hit Wonder?
That's CNC Music Factory.
I didn't know that.
I
Anyhow.
have the album.
Anyhow, yeah.
Yeah, I have it on tape.
It's right beside my MC Hammer Can't Touch This.
It's right next to my MC Hammer tape, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Eric,
Okay,
please.
next.
It's all good. It's all good. We went through like 2 or 3 iterations, and to keep costs down, we discovered that PVC pipe instead of metal is a great resonator. All you really need is the airspace. They didn't save on weight that much, but it certainly saved on cost and also machining. And we found an epoxy that is super strong to hold the joints of the PVC pipes together. I mean, we've actually thrown one up in his driveway and it hits the ground and nothing's happened. It's
Nice.
fun experiment.
Wow.
So we went to our first PASIC and everybody was very skeptical. And then Gordon Stout came over and he was like, "Oh my God, this is amazing. We're saving the planet because these aren't rosewood bars." You know how he has
Yeah.
His very strong opinions on rosewood and how it's being, and as we all know at this point, it's going to be a rare commodity, unless of course you're Yamaha, which has, warehouses and of that. But it's been a crazy ride. And actually, this year is just John. Actually, he owned a landscaping business, so he was kind of doing the marimba thing and juggling that and the landscaping business. He actually sold the landscaping business and is making marimbas full time. He actually sold his house. And out in Florida, if you move west, as Ben knows, you can get a lot of land. And he actually bought a home with a workshop out back. So we now have our own building. It's air conditioned. We have a staff of about 4 people working full time. El Paso School District almost exclusively uses our marimbas at this point. They just ordered another 3 last week. Cirque du Soleil uses our instruments, which is pretty cool. And I mean, at this point, I think we have around 80 to 100 units throughout the United States. We have one in Australia now, Canada, of course, and we're actually thinking about distributing in Japan. We've had a couple people come forward to us.
Wow.
I would say I will vouch for it. It's by far the best sounding synthetic instrument I've ever played on. And I think the Yamaha synthetic instruments sound pretty good too, but the Yamaha bars are such a different size than rosewood bars, whereas the Mode ones seem very much like just normal rosewood bars, just made out of plastic.
I listened on your website, Eric, and I thought they sounded really, really good. And all of you guys who are, still, really skeptical about synthetic instruments. I mean, yeah, sure, it's not exactly rosewood, but man, I feel like there have been advancements in the last decade or so.
Well, and I think Eric would agree with me that, when you have middle schoolers that can barely hold the mallets,
right,
to bang up a rosewood keyboard, and like he said, it's a precious commodity, and this is I think what Gordon was going on about, like if you learn to play well at a young age on these instruments, then when you get to the big boy rosewood instrument, like you're playing well, but I mean, it's just like in Texas, I mean, it's both a really good thing and a really bad thing that you can literally walk into middle schools in Texas and find 5-octave marimba ones in a middle school, and it's like you count the cracked bars a lot of times. So
right, and like with drum corps, I mean, I'm sure that they've gotten better about this since I've been out of the activity. But when I was marching, I mean, we would have 2 sets of rosewood keys a season, and one was the practice set and one was the show set. Sometimes we'd have 3 sets for 5 marimbas.
Yeah.
One summer. That is so much rosewood to go through,
Yeah, it's no good.
It's irresponsible. It's completely irresponsible. And, we're practicing out in the sun and the bars just lock up. That's not good for it. Yeah. Obviously. So yeah, that's awesome that we now have some more options because maybe there will still continue to be rosewood marimbas until the end of humanity or the end of marimba playing or whatever. But I think it's pretty clear that not every marimba can be rosewood anymore.
Megan, do you think marimba playing will last till the end of humanity?
Yeah, that was an interesting, right?
That was a great statement.
I think so.
I mean,
Casey,
I think so. I think it might continue beyond the length of humanity.
Okay, I'm just going to table that question, and I'm going to ask Eric another one, which is, so what exactly is your role in the company then?
Sure. So John is not a percussionist. He loves music. He plays guitar. He was kind of like into singer-songwriting, but I mean, he didn't know what a marimba was until he saw his son playing one. He's like, wow, that's awesome. Why doesn't everybody play a marimba? I'm like, John, because it costs $10,000, or more. And so he became fascinated with it. So I'm kind of here to, and I do like web design and graphic and things. So I kind of helped with that in the beginning. And also I'm kind of the liaison to the percussion world. Because there's many things that John would come to me and he would say with the design, he's like, hey, let's do this. This is a great idea. And I would say, John, we can't do that because now the space between the bars is like 5 inches, So there's like little things that, I'm kind of his consultant in that role. And I hope to have, I will have a bigger role. There's a bigger plan. Like it's crazy how fast the company is growing at this point. And once I can come on absolutely full time, I will, and it would make financial sense to the company and everything else. But yeah, I'm basically like the person out front who's the percussionist.
I see. Cool.
Eric, we
That's
actually
awesome.
had a Facebook question about mode marimba that you sort of already answered, but I'll spin it into a more broad question. Ben Millesen asked, what other materials did you look at when you wanted to develop a synthetic marimba? And I'd like to further ask, what were some of the, I'm sure you had some prototypes that were just disasters. Were there any funny or interesting things you ran into along the way?
Well, whenever we were figuring out the different types of material for bars, there were some that it didn't resonate at all. It sounded like a little toy. Nothing that was. We had some though that had like a higher percentage of fiberglass inside of it that it rang like a freaking wine glass. That was pretty hilarious. But nothing that sticks out. Whenever we were one of the funniest stories was whenever we were trying to learn how to use the CNC machine, because neither one of us had ever messed with it before, right? It's and there's no instructions how to work a 15-year-old CNC machine, and we accidentally launched a bar through his garage door one day. That was pretty cool.
God, I was just gonna say, It sounds pretty dangerous if you don't know what you do.
Yeah, it would have made a great railgun or something like that. But that also proved the durability of these bars, because the bar was unscathed. It shot through the door, skipped across the driveway. But I guess one of the interesting things was learning how durable the instrument was, as we would accidentally try to smash it to smithereens. But yeah, it was we got in a bunch of different samples from different manufacturers from all over the world, really, until we finally found this one particular manufacturer that could make it to our specifications.
Very cool, very cool. Well, you guys, I do have a What's the Sound for you today. And
Awesome.
Let me think, what is the hint going to be? So the hint, I think, should be that this is not a digital effect or trick that you're listening to. It is a perfectly natural trick. So there's a little drum beat you're going to hear, and then you're going to hear it done differently, and then again a different way, and then yet again differently. So I guess the question is, what's happening to the recording? Okay, so that's one. Here's two. And here's three. All right, any ideas?
Is this where they recorded the reverb through a garden hose?
Oh, you're so spot on. Yeah.
What?
So,
You didn't know that?
way to go, Eric. Dude, out of nowhere, he just
Dang.
nailed it.
Well, real quick, I was going to say, it reminded me of, and it's not this, obviously, but it reminded me of, do you guys know the drummer Mark Juliana?
Yeah.
Know the name.
He played on David Bowie's final album. But anyway,
Yeah.
Mark Juliana is very interested in the sort of the different digital sounds, like the 80s gated snare drum sound. And so a lot of the time he cuts out actually the inside of a drum head and places it on top of another drum head, on top of a snare drum, and it gives it that sort of 80s Phil Collins sort of sound. And so I was going to say something else about this, but it's escaping me now. But yeah, there's ways you can make acoustic instruments sound like electronic instruments.
So Eric, totally what Eric just mentioned, this idea of creating fake reverb through a garden hose, this, where at least I found this, is on Creative Sound Lab, is a YouTube channel. So on Creative Sound Lab, they do that exact experiment. This guy says, and he runs a recording studio, and him and his colleagues say, if you're recording drums in a small room and you want to make it feel like it's a bigger room, but your room isn't big enough to just use a traditional room mic off in the corner, something you can do is put a microphone in a garden hose and then drape the garden hose all around the drum. And of course the vibrations seep into the hose and they resonate through the hose, and you get this bigger room sound. And just like Ben said, it does give it this retro feel and sound. So that's what attracted me to the channel.
That's
but
bizarre.
instead of dragging a garden hose into my office, I did another experiment that they do, which is take my room mic in my office, which I just use a SM57 in the corner. And actually, I have pictures for you guys. Let's see if this works. Okay, so I took my room mic, and the first thing you heard was the room mic by itself, so with nothing else by it. But instead of a garden hose, you can just take other drums or instruments or gongs. So my student Adam DePercio and I, he helped me do this because we were kind of using it as an excuse to kind of explore how to record and how to level a mic and do all that stuff. So if you put a drum next to the room mic, it will of course resonate with the frequencies of the drum. So yeah, imagine I've got drum set on one side of the room, and then I've got this little room mic on the other side of my office. And my office is a carpet, it's a soft ceiling, it's sound blocking things, foams on the wall. So yeah, it's not a really resonant room. So a room mic alone doesn't do too much. But if you just add some type of resonating cavity by the room mic, you'll get that whole extra resonance and that big boominess. It doesn't sound very good because I really overbalanced it, so you guys could hear the effect. So one more time, let me just tell you what you're listening to, and then I'll show you some other fun ones. So this is without any extra resonating instrument. This is just the room mic by itself. And then this next one is the small tom-tom, like 10-inch. So I hope that's coming across as really different to you guys.
Yes, definitely.
Here's a floor tom.
Wow.
I have some more for you.
What's that?
That's a wine glass.
What?
Wine glass?
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, let me show you the wine glass one more time because it's cool. It's a really dramatic effect. I think there's a photo there. The wine glass is on that first set of photos I sent you.
Oh. Yes.
That's wine glass.
Wow.
That's a glass vase. And that's a timpani.
Yeah, that guess that one.
That's funny.
Yeah, right? Yeah, Laurel heard me editing this stuff like all evening and night. So like I said, it doesn't exactly sound very good, but that's because I'm overbalancing the room mic and just like cranking it all the way to the max, so you guys can really, you can hear just like how distinctive it is. Gongs actually sound really good. They work really well, but I didn't include them for the podcast because the difference is so subtle. Like the difference is really nuanced, and it does actually sound like a effective effect, if you will. I did one more, and that's just trying to make it sound good. So I used the timpani, and I really underbalanced it. So this is my favorite. This is like actually something I'd be willing to use. And the timpani is way, way down there, and it's just like barely there. It makes it sound like the snare just has like a really good poppy sound. So let me play that one for you.
Wow.
So I don't know how that's coming off to you guys, but it just sounds like way good to me over here, at least. So anyway, I don't know really what to call this. This is probably really, like Laurel, I imagine Tom Carr right now listening to this, just going like, well, duh, yeah, that's what happens. Like, that's just like really, really basic acoustics, but it was like really fun. And Adam and I and three other students, we just kind of screwed around with this between lessons for like a good hour or so. And it was like a really, really good exercise in just kind of figuring out, how does little recording little properties of all this stuff work, and it was a fun way to kind of explore how to record and use multiple microphones and leveling mics and all these natural effects. So yeah, more little fun tricks like this, like Eric mentioned at that Creative Sound, what was it called? Creative Sound Lab YouTube channel.
With the hose, you just put the mic at the very end, right? It doesn't have to be a special kind of mic or something. It's just...
Yeah, and they use, I think they did a garden hose, and then they also did a rain drain hose.
Oh,
like
yeah.
Those big accordion hoses that go off of rain gutters on houses.
Right.
And yeah, the whole key is that you have to seal it. And I mean, in a way, like, this could be really, really practical. I mean, if you have to record drum set and all you have is your practice room, I mean, all of a sudden you would literally increase the size of the resonating space by like putting it next to either some kind of resonating drum head or inside of some long tube, like a hose or something. And of course, you know, the obvious thing is, hey, you know, you can just add a little reverb on Audacity or something, and you can EQ on Audacity or something. Sure. All that is totally true. But again, I mean, I think it'd be like a really good exploratory, like, you know, recording 101 type of assignment or something. And if you don't have, I don't know, if you don't have Audacity or you don't find a way to do that, it's like totally some practical use, I think.
Yeah, that's really interesting. It'd be also cool to do like a side-by-side comparison of doing that versus adding a filter in, you know, after it's recorded. I wonder, I'm sure it would be different, you know, but I wonder how different and in what way. Yeah,
sure.
This reminds me of two things. One, do you guys know the John Cage piece In a Landscape?
Yes, of course. Yeah.
A lot of people that basically do this in a live performance setting. They put a lot of gongs or like resonant things around to try and get more of that natural resonance when they play. But this also reminded me of when I think about bands that sort of expanded the repertoire of recording studios. Obviously, the Beatles come up yet again in Casey's What the Sound segment. The Beatles come up.
I don't even like the Beatles, and that's twice.
Have you ever heard the Beatles song "Your Blues"?
No.
So it was actually, they recorded this song in a closet. They actually piled the entire band into the closet, and it has this sort of like tinny, I can't really describe it, just this tinny kind of thin, trashy sounding quality to it, but it's exactly this, like messing around with sort of natural phenomena. And like, obviously back then they didn't have all the sort of Pro Tools stuff that we have today, but still, like, I think if I was going to record that today, I would still do it the same way and try and do it acoustically rather than just throw a thing on in Pro Tools or whatever and be done with it.
Yeah. Well, and, you know, I mean, I don't know much about recording, as you guys know, and I'm sure we have several past guests. I mean, I can just imagine John Parks like just dying right now listening to this presentation I just did. But man, it was really fun for me. I mean, I could have done this for another couple hours. I thought it was really enjoyable, and my students were really enjoying it. And what I could say then is that I think you do run a risk doing this naturally, because you got another mic, you have more possibility of hiss and you know, another variable to deal with. Whereas if you do it digitally after, you don't have to worry about extra mic problems. But on the other hand, I would say a lot of people can spot digital effects really quick, and it drives them crazy, you know, especially people who are really used to doing this. You know, they hear fake reverb and they hate it, you know, it really, really drives them nuts. So yeah, doing it somehow all acoustically would be spot on. Yeah.
Awesome topic, Casey. Very cool.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, it was fun. All right, Ben, you got a Facebook question there?
Yeah, so I have a question for Eric from Adam Hopper, and Adam actually asked a question that was relevant to what my topic was going to be today. So I'll ask Eric, and then I'll talk at the question for a minute. Adam Hopper asks, what's your process for selecting literature for your ensembles?
It depends on the ensemble, of course, and the group of kids. With my middle school students, the bot kids, I think it's so important, and well, this is really, especially at any middle school level for me, that they are so excited about percussion. You know, I mean, I know that whenever I was a middle schooler, I'm sure you all can relate. Well, maybe not Ben, because he's always been cool. But we're so awkward in middle school. And, everything that we do, we're self-conscious about. So it's super important, I think, that I pick music that I know they're going to buy into, and that's a little over their heads. Because if they really like it and you don't tell them it's hard, even if it is maybe a little bit over their heads, they're going to pull it off because they think it's cool. They want to impress each other. And it also helps kind of build a good culture at the school. So as far as the middle school kids, I always like to do something that's kind of has a little bit of a groove to it sometimes. It's like at PASIC, they love all of Ivan's music. They had a fun time working with him, with the Catching Shadows. And then also, I love Nathan Daughtry's music. Drew always makes fun of me. He's like, you just love Nathan Daughtry too much. I'm like, yeah, I do. I love his music. I love the way he composes. I love the range he arranges. That's where like everything he writes is in Lydian. I love that. It sounds magical. Yeah, I always want to make sure that, I think the kids are going to buy into it. It does contain some concepts a little over their heads, and I want to enjoy it too. I want to have fun working with them and challenge myself.
Yeah, sure. Ben, you have a topic today, right?
Yeah, so related to this, I guess it was a week ago, I judged a high school solo and ensemble festival, and it's funny, especially being in Texas, I find the level of playing in high schools now is definitely significantly higher than what it was when I was a high school student. And pretty much every group I heard just blew me away in terms of their performance. But I find that oftentimes the musical selections to me don't have what I'll call lasting musical value, or at least in my opinion, they don't.
Oh, no, well said. I know what you mean.
Yeah, and it's just like, and I feel like a lot of it has to do with there are publishers now that are very good at marketing, and they send out the CD of all their music with, their catalog, and I think it's very easy to market music that oftentimes isn't of the quality that I would want to necessarily hear on a concert. So I was trying to figure out how to sort of broach the topic, and the state of Texas and the state of Florida, and I'm sure many other states have some sort of, in Texas they call it the PML, the prescribed music list. And so since Eric's from Florida, I went on the Florida one. I think it's the MPA list or something like that in Florida, Master Performance Assessment. And I looked at all the percussion ensemble pieces, and I just picked a couple. And I'll tell you a little bit about the pieces, but also the little bit about the pieces is also sort of why maybe if I was a middle or high school director, I would select them. And I will say, Ivan Trevino has this blog entry about like my make-believe perfect music school, and he straight up says right at the beginning, he says, as a complete preface to this, like, I don't have a college music program, and I can easily say this as an outsider. And so for me also, I will give the caveat that like, while I wouldn't do like a buckets and trash cans piece and try and sell it as an artistic thing, that is a way to get kids into playing percussion, especially middle schoolers. So I don't think there's anything, I would rather have a percussion ensemble playing corny music rather than no percussion ensemble at all. So I'm not trying to knock anyone for doing those pieces by any means, trying to be very cautious and diplomatic about what I say here. But anyway, so my qualifications as I looked through the Florida MPA list of percussion ensemble pieces, I wanted to find something that was within reach for most high school students, both technically and musically. For example, third construction is actually on the list, but I don't think third construction is graspable for most high school students, at least in a reasonable amount of time.
No, that's absurd.
Correct way, I think. And then
wow, that's on a high school list?
It is. It's like a grade 8 or something like that. But yeah, I mean, it's like even Eric's kids at Dreyfus, I think, would.
No, I've never attempted anything like that.
Unconducted third construction, yeah. And then I also wanted to make sure the equipment demands for my pieces were reasonable that I chose today. So I wanted to generally try and stick to standard instruments or relatively cheap and attainable things. And I tried to avoid excessive doubling. For example, Akira Nishimura's Ketchak is on the list, but that piece needs 8 congas and 4 sets of bongos, which I don't think is realistic for most high schools. So I tried to avoid those pieces. And also, I wanted to pick I picked two pieces today. I wanted to pick a composer that was relevant outside the scope of percussion, because I think as a music educator, it's important to educate about music, not about percussion. And not that there's anything wrong with percussion composers, but these pieces could serve as gateways to stuff outside of just percussion. So the two pieces I selected today, piece number one is Alan Hovhaness, October Mountain, from 1942, and I found a dissertation by Joe Moore on this piece, and if you've ever wanted to know anything about October Mountain, it is in that dissertation. It was extremely comprehensive. If you're not familiar with this piece, it's a 5-movement suite scored for percussion sextet. The instruments are marimba, orchestra bells, timpani, tenor drum, gong, bass drum, and tam-tam. So relatively, pretty much any high school would have those instruments. I think it's only one marimba, so it's not like you need a marimba line or anything like that. One thing that I thought would be cool for students playing this piece is that it was actually written when the composer was a student at Tanglewood in 1942. So I think as a student, I would appreciate hearing that a student had composed the piece I was playing. And it introduces students to a lot of stuff outside of the sort of typical American band canon they might not be exposed to. So, for example, Hovhaness was very interested in exoticism, and he took a serious interest in Indian and Japanese music, and you can clearly hear the influence of Indian and Japanese music on this piece. There are places that have a very sparse texture, and there are all sorts of interesting scale types. As far as the Indian influence, there's also, he uses rhythmic cycles in Indian music known as tala, and he says he uses some authentic ones, but also makes up his own. It uses a technique called jala, which is when you have like sort of a pulsating 16th note drone, and then you sort of skip out for melodic notes, if you can picture what I'm talking about. And then the introduction of this piece actually has like a pseudo 12-tone passage. It's not exactly Schoenberg 12 tones, but it's definitely an allusion to the work of Schoenberg. So for young students to be exposed to Schoenberg as high schoolers, I think is pretty cool. And then I think it could be a great gateway piece to students for exploring, obviously, world music, but also some of the other works by this one of the most prolific composers of the 20th century, who has over 500 works in his catalog. And he also has a xylophone catalog called Fantasy on Japanese Woodprints, which, if you've ever done like an undergraduate concerto competition, there's not many great percussion concertos for those competitions, because the Schwantner concerto or the Higdon concerto, while they're great, are these gigantic virtuosic pieces that require a ton of equipment, and most college sophomores cannot pull those pieces off. So then the other piece I wanted to talk about today that was also on the Florida list is Lou Harrison's Song of Quetzalcoatl.
Oh, yeah, we just did that.
Yeah. And so if you're curious about this piece, there's also a dissertation by Sean Roberts on this piece. And again, I had no idea you could write that comprehensive of a dissertation on it. I mean, it is anything and everything you could possibly want to know about this piece is in there. It's over 200 pages.
I went to school with Sean, actually. That's funny.
So, yeah, it's a percussion quartet. There's a recording of Third Coast Percussion doing it. It's one of those Vic Firth recordings. And it's scored for a slightly more unusual instruments, but still very attainable. It's scored for glasses, wood blocks, dragon's mouths, which are sort of an old-timey name for wood temple blocks, sistrum, which you can also substitute in maracas, cowbells, brake drums, wooden rattle, snare drum, whirro, glass wind chimes, triangle gong, tam-tam, tom-toms, and a bass drum. So again, no exotic elephant bells or anything like that required. And it was premiered on Lou Harrison's 24th birthday on a concert with John Cage. And we talked about this on an episode a while back. I can't remember which one, but it was that concert that had like 6 pieces, and the last piece was double music that Cage and Harrison composed together. But again, I think for a student to hear that a composer wrote a piece at 24 years of age is kind of relevant. It's related to an Aztec tale of a feathered serpent hero god. So I think that's kind of neat that it ties in sort of world culture outside of just music. And Harrison imagined that the music might be used for a film capturing images from Mexican texts. So if you have a student that's interested in sort of videography or filmmaking or Evan Green or something like that. It's not Evan Green, that's my student, was Evan Chapman. I think it's kind of like maybe a student could make a video component to go along with this piece. It introduces students to the sort of 1930s, 1940s American school of composers, including Lou Harrison, John Cage, Charles Ives, and Henry Cowell, who who I think are unarguably one of the most progressive movements in musical history. It also introduces students to new compositional techniques. So Lou Harrison had this idea of creating melodicals, which are these short little melodic cells that can be played in inverse or retrograde, which starts to sound sort of like 12-tone rows, but they're not obviously 12 tones. And it also uses drones, which Harrison, I guess as a high school student, became very interested in Gregorian chant, which he studied once a week in high school, according to this dissertation. And so like introducing high school students to Gregorian chant through a more approachable percussion ensemble piece, I think it's pretty cool. And last but not least, one of the reasons I would pick this piece, perhaps if I was a high school director, is that it uses found instruments. And I think Eric will probably vouch for if students have a chance to find their own instruments and sort of make a piece their own, I think they kind of get into it a little bit more. And so these are both, like I said, these are both 1940s pieces, 1942 and 1941, very historically relevant, very prominent composers in and outside of the percussion canon. I think it'd be cool to introduce students to those works at a young age. So that's, if I was a middle or high school director, those are the pieces I would pick, perhaps.
So I want to clarify my gripe about third construction being on the list. I think this is not just a matter of, okay, can they execute it? Can they do those fives over the bar line? Can they do all the rhythms? Fine. Even if they can,
are they ready for it?
Are they like mature enough to like get what it has to say? You know, I mean, sure, maybe they can play it, they can get exposed to it, great, but their time could be better spent with something communicating on. You can make the same case about literature. Like, yeah, sure, you could certainly read of Mice and Men in middle school. It's not like there are giant words in there, or the subject matter is too adult or something, but you're going to get so much more bang for your buck if you read that when you're a little older and you have
work up to it. Yeah, and I mean,
yeah, you have more life experience and you're able to like actually appreciate all that's there. Yeah, sure, you'll understand all the words and everything, but it's like, oh no, let's let you be a little older for when you soak that in.
Yeah, and I think the chamber skills required to pull off third construction, like you can build those through these other pieces a lot.
Sure.
A lot better.
Well, and the same can be said for, you know, college students that are playing pieces that can be grasped by middle schoolers and high schoolers. It's like, no, the thing you should be communicating now is different because you can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Like I'm playing Gumdrop Lolly Lolly on. It's like, well, wait a minute. You're sorry. Gumdrop Lolly Lolly is not what adults talk about. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like.
Yeah, it's not that it's invalid, it's that you're past it now. And
Right. Like it's beyond whether you can nail all those notes or whatever. It's also just about a sense of like, what is the conversation that you're having with your like age group, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Gumdrop Lolly.
Yeah. Do you know that piece?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, it sounds great. Eric, please say something because you're the one who's actually expert here.
Yeah, and you, like you said, you know, already also that, you know, you pick pieces that challenge your students, that takes them to the next level, and you don't tell them that, you know, you let them rise to the challenge, and they typically do, as you said.
Yes, they typically do, but also, like, I mean, I completely agree with everything that you all are saying. A lot of the times, like especially the middle school kids, they'll come in and they'll find a piece they're really excited about. It's usually, you know, a solo piece. And it's just, it's so far beyond the scope of what they can even understand, just from a musical standpoint. Their hands can play the note, sure. I mean, they'll come in and like be like blazing through. I can't think of any examples right now, but I'm like, it's great. Technically, okay, great. It has no solar meaning because you're 12. You know what I mean? So it's
right.
So it's difficult to that's the biggest challenge I find with those particular kids. But sometimes they'll surprise you. But it's I totally agree with everything you all are saying with that.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's like the old saying is like, oh, if you want to be an artist, you can't be an artist if you've never had your heart broken. You can't be a poet if you've never felt the loss of a loved one. You know, I mean, it's like back to that type of thinking. It's like, yeah, dude, you can't express this, I don't know, this harder stuff to express if you haven't had as much life experience,
Mm-hmm.
And not that it's harmful. I mean, I think it's fine. It's totally fine. But if you were to kind of look at the time it would take to do, say, third construction versus what you could get out of a bunch of other pieces, it's like, man, I just think there's more quality to be done with a bunch of other pieces at that age.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Laura, what do you have for us today?
Yeah, so today, considering the time of year it is, just spring recital season, and knowing that Eric has the company that builds marimbas, I thought this would be a good time to just list out some marimba competitions, especially because some of them have prelim rounds that are either audio only or video only, which means they're super easy to apply to, which was not the case a few years ago. I was just talking to you about that this morning, Casey. I swear these audio rounds did not exist. But it's great that...
No, I think they want people to come. I'm surprised that you found the ones you did, because, I mean, a lot of them, they want people at their event,
Yeah. I mean, but it makes... And I understand that, but it makes a lot of sense for... as an individual of like, awesome, so I can just pay $25 and send in a tape. That's awesome. Instead of all the money to go. Before I started that, though, I just wanted to ask you guys if I'm right about this, that there aren't solo competitions at PASIC this year, because that's where I started, and I didn't see any. Does that sound right to you?
I don't know. I had heard something that they were cutting a bunch of the solo competitions, but then I kind of heard that some of them were added back. Do you guys know?
I know there was talk of such things, but I don't know where it all settled.
Yeah, I think they are still doing the chamber competition, but the solo stuff might be gone.
Yeah, that's what I found. Yeah, the PASIC 18 website, it just has about the international ensemble competition. But I didn't know if that was right, and if any of you would know. So I guess, maybe be on the lookout for that, because I remember that, Megan, they were talking about losing them, but then I thought they were perhaps trying to create like a larger one.
Yeah.
So maybe years in the future, everybody be on the lookout. So anyway, here's some marimba competitions coming up if you're interested. There's the Italy PAS competition, which you sign up by June 4th. So this is one where you go in person. All the rounds take place in person, and that's September 18th to 23rd at the Serena Majestic Hotel in Pescara, Italy, which is on the east coast of the country.
That's a nice thing. We've done that several times.
Cool.
Yeah, it's really nice. You stay in the hotel and you get all your meals there at the hotel. It's just really great. There's also, again in Italy, it's called the Philadelphia Festival. So not Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, but in Philadelphia, Italy. Sign up by April 7th. But this one takes place in May. So it is super soon. But you can keep it in mind for years in the future. Now on to some that have some video and audio prelims. And I think this is so great because especially if you're already doing the work to learn one of these big rep pieces for a recital or something, you might as well just make a video and send it in. Why not?
First, it's like a pre-screening.
Yeah, for real. Just send it. The Great Plains Marimba Competition. Audio prelims are due April 1st. The semifinal and final rounds are live, and they take place in Oklahoma City, July 5th through 8th.
And Ben said that Eric had a student just win that, right?
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I'd say 2 or 3 years ago. When did Ben win that?
Okay.
But, yeah. Charles Commodore. Shout out to Charles up at Yale. He's at Yale studying it now, so.
Cool.
Yeah, that's great. They have, so Great Plains has different age groups, and some of these competitions have that, others don't, and sorry everybody, I didn't make note of those. You'll have to just check out the websites for that and for the rep in particular. If you're in Australia, there's the Australian Percussion Academy Marimba competition. That video prelim is due May 1st. All the other rounds happen live at the University of Melbourne, August 4th through 5th. There's also the International Percussion Institute competition. This is a video prelim due May 1st. It's also a video semifinal. And then you only travel for the live round, which will take place in Aberdeen, Scotland on August 8th. I wanted to tell you guys about this one in particular. So the IPI, International Percussion Institute, because that opening round, you get to pick whatever piece you want. So you don't have to learn any compulsory pieces. So whatever you're already doing at a 12-minute maximum, can't exceed that. Just make a video and submit it. One take, one camera angle, done. The only thing is the registration fee is $100, but it's any piece you want. Another competition that I just found is the Geneva competition, and this is in 2019, but I wanted to mention it here because it'll be Percussion in 2019, and it doesn't come around again for about 10 years by the time it rotates through all the other instruments. And this is a huge one, everyone. So it's worth really looking at. You have to sign up by May 1st of next year, and pre-screen tapes are spring of next year. But again, it won't come around till 2029. So you might as well take a look. The live rounds themselves will take place in November of 2019. This is a competition on the same level as the Concert Artist Guild in New York that comes up, because if you win nearly 20,000 euro for first prize, as well as tons of career development stuff. So you win, let's see, 2 years of representation, you win master classes, you win an international tour, you get like festival dates, you win all kinds of things in addition to just money from this one. And you can find it online just by searching the Geneva competition, and it should be pretty easy to see. A few others that are either on a 2, 3, or 4 year rotation or have happened recently, and I don't know when they're happening again, but you can keep them on your radar, are the I'm a Hog competition, and this is a concerto competition that takes place in Texas every year, and the winner gets to perform.
So the Houston Symphony, yeah.
Houston Symphony, thanks. There's the Universal Marimba competition. That's every 2, 3, or 4 years in Belgium. No age limit to that one. So a lot of these I've mentioned do have age limits, so you'll have to look, but that one does not. In Lithuania is the International Competition of Wind and Percussion. So this sign up has passed, but it happens every 2 years. And the complete prize money is 40,000 euro. So that's another big one. There's the International Marimba Festival Congress and Competition. This is happening for the 3rd time this April in Bamberg, Germany. So you can keep an eye out for when it's going to happen again, because I think that one was won on maybe a 2-year rotation. There's also the World Marimba Competition, which I don't think has happened for quite some time, in Stuttgart, Germany. I think that hasn't happened since 2012. Anyone feel free to, comment if you think it's happened otherwise. And then just others I found while searching. So everyone feel free to look for regional things in your area, because I did find some, lots of Day of Percussion competitions. Look for things like that. And then the United States International Music Competition and Midwest Young Artist competitions. There's just tons of things, and you win performances, you win money, and this is something that I wish I had looked at when I was a little bit younger. So yeah, I hope if you're already doing the work, you might as well just enter one of these and see what happens, and then make the decision on whether you want to travel to compete, because it's certainly a worthwhile thing.
One other one that I don't think Laurel mentioned is the Trump competition, of course, which I think is every even year, like biannually. So I guess that's coming up. What year is it? I guess I don't know. It's coming up at some point. Maybe it's not every even year. It's not annually, but it's every so often they have the Trump competition. We've had obviously a couple of Trump laureates on our show before.
Yeah. I think it's every 3. Does that sound right?
Maybe, yeah. But yeah, and that one also, it does have a preliminary round. I think the preliminary round is Ray-Bans A or B, and maybe like a vibraphone piece or something like that.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, great. Thanks, Laura. I would add that Taiwan festival we just got back from, they've added the Jew Percussion group, their festival. They've added a competition.
Yeah, I couldn't find their dates and
Yeah, it's probably a few years away still. So yeah, maybe they haven't. But yeah, prize money for that one was big. Yeah, it was really good. Yeah. Hey, well, I think we have one more Facebook question for Eric, which would probably be just perfect to give him the last couple of minutes and
I've got ready.
Clear up our Facebook questions.
It's by Connor Yeackley, who is a FSU student now from South Florida, and he says, "What are your thoughts on starting a serious percussion education as early as middle school? Keep up the great work with Bach."
Man, it depends. It depends on the kid. It depends on the individual. I mean, if they right now I have 6 kids in the 8th grade at Bach right now, and out of those 6, 3 I can see 3 really just they have the drive. They have developed this great culture just between the 3 of them where they're great friends, but they push each other and it's all positive, you know. So I mean and I've seen so many kids from even other different middle schools where it's either they have the drive or they don't. I mean, I kind of just like try to like give them tools like, hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about this? And they drive absolutely everything though. I don't ever want to push a kid. Maybe I'm a little bit too positive sometimes. I'm not, and Ben, you probably know this. I'm not the slave driver person. I'm the cheerleader on the sidelines type. That's my personality. And I think if somebody's going to be successful, it is going to start at that point in their lives, that young. Another driving factor, if a kid does want to be successful at that level, middle school level, the key defining factor from what I've seen from doing this is having an instrument at your house. Like the kids who have a marimba at their house, like all of my Bach kids except for one, which is amazing, middle school kids, they have a marimba in their house.
Wow.
And that's a game changer. Having an instrument that you can actually play on and practice on that's actually fun and sounds great, you know? I had a marimba in my house in middle school. I was lucky enough to have that. And I think that's definitely an element of why I'm still doing what I'm doing. Nobody likes to practice on a bell kit in the 7th grade. You know, it's awful.
Yeah.
So if you are serious, try to get an instrument, rent it, something.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I had a student once, I guess I was a sophomore or freshman in college. I was teaching a middle school kid, and you know, you'd have a couple of unprepared weeks in a row, and I finally kind of had that tough talk, like, you know, do you really want to do this? And he finally said, no, my parents are making me do this. And after talking with him a little more, turns out he was doing like 2 different sports in high school. He was doing percussion lessons. He was studying some other instrument, and I don't remember everything, but it ended up being something like 6 things, you know. And I'm just thinking, like, man, that, you know, back to the question, you know, what do you mean by serious? You know, because if that's getting serious with a kid about their future and their interests and their experience, like, dude, that's just stupid. Like, it's just, you know, like, that's not smart. Don't do that to somebody. I mean, if they're thriving on it, if they're doing great, fine. But this person clearly was not. I mean, this person clearly was very unhappy and didn't enjoy it, and at least wasn't being successful in our lessons. And I imagine not being successful in at least some of the other areas too. It's just like, come on, be realistic. You don't need to. Come on.
It's funny to me. It seems like high schools push students like you have to participate in things. You have to be in. The more things you can be in, the better. And it's like, you know, you look at like, oh, you were in choir, band, beta club, football team, soccer team. Like, it's like you have to have some time to just be a creative individual. You know, like not an organized structure. And it's just like. I think it's so. I'm not saying you can only do one thing, which seems to be how Texas goes a lot. But it's like, you know, pick a couple things, be on the track team and be in band and be really good at those 2 things rather than trying to just do everything and just sort of to get the resume points, so to speak.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm sure we're totally talking out of turn. I mean, there are experts that probably have a lot to say about this. I mean, I certainly don't know how to back this up other than that experience, but
here's how I'll back it up. Like as a college professor, I would want to see a student that had excelled in a couple of things to show that they had the work ethic in whatever field they chose in high school, if they apply that same work ethic to a field in college. I don't want students that are in the concert band and the pep band and percussion ensemble and singing choir and like just do all sort of mediocre. Now, if they can do all those things perfectly, then that's cool too. I'm totally fine with that. But I would rather see a student that had shown the drive to become, I don't know, captain of the soccer team. And if they can do that same sort of work ethic in music, then I think they show some promise.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Yeah, if I saw all those activities, yeah, likewise, it'd probably first occur to me as a red flag rather than like whatever. I don't know. Well, you guys, thank you so much for doing, what were we? We were 136, I think. Yes, 136. And thanks, Megan. Megan had to step out. Thanks, Ben and Laurel and Eric Rucker. Man, thanks so much. It's great to hear you talk and to finally meet you.
Yeah, you all as well. And maybe I'll run into you at PASIC if we do that next year. You can stop by the mode booth. I'll be there next year.
You got it.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Well, again, congrats on the Bot Kids winning last year at PASIC. That's really cool and exciting, and yeah, means a lot. So, okay, everyone, thank you so much. We'll catch you on 137.
Great.
And thanks, guys.